Center for the Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on rule of law and governments. In our last lesson, we discussed various elements of due process of law. All of these elements are part of the judicial protection of the rights of individuals. As I'm sure you recall, we discussed defendants' rights to fair notice, impartial tribunal, speedy and public trials, legal counsel, protection against self-incrimination, protection against double jeopardy, and rights of appeal. In this lesson, we will turn our attention to the importance of limiting the powers of the federal and regional governments in Ethiopia. Students, we will begin with a review exercise to define some key terms. Please provide a definition for federalism and explain Ethiopia's federal system. Next, define limited and unlimited government. Please begin whenever you are ready.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Thank you for your participation in this activity. Federalism is a system of government meant to protect the interests of different groups and to avoid a concentration of power in one area. It is a system of government that embodies a division of power between central and regional authorities. Ethiopia has a federal government, and the country is divided into 9 states, as you can see here. The states are divided along ethno-cultural lines. Ethiopia is the first country in Africa to have a federal system organized this way. Limited government means that there are legal restrictions placed on government officials and authorities regarding how much power they may exercise. Limited government upholds rule of law and requires government to be transparent and accountable. Unlimited government means that the officials and authorities of the government have supreme power and authority. They are not legally restricted with regard to the ways they exercise their power. They are not required to be transparent or accountable. Very well done, students. Federalism assists the formation and maintenance of limited government. This is because the federal system divides power between the federal government and the regional governments in a way that stops any one government from assuming too much power. The federal and regional governments are limited in their roles and responsibilities. They work together to create a balance of power and a system of checks and balances. Federalism also upholds rule of law. One of the chief principles of rule of law is equality. Federalism is designed to harmonize unity with diversity. It is important to understand that the regional governments are independent from the federal government. Nonetheless, they work in harmony with the federal government and with the other regional governments. The emphasis of federalism is on the division of power. Its purpose is to limit the power of the federal government and to allow the regional governments their independence and sovereignty. Students, why do you think that federalism is important for Ethiopia? Please write your answers down.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Well done, students. Federalism is important for Ethiopia for several reasons. First, Ethiopia is a very large country geographically. The larger the country, the more difficult it is for a central government to function well. Ethiopia also has a very large population. It is difficult for a single central government to represent the needs and interests of such a big populace. Similarly, the country is not only heavily populated, but also its population is also made up of widely diverse ethno-linguistic groups. In order for the different cultural groups to maintain and foster their identities, as well as to develop their own interests and satisfy their differing needs, federalism is necessary. Federalism in Ethiopia allows different groups to maintain their sovereignty and independence while being unified as Ethiopian citizens. The federal and regional governments exist under the FDRE Constitution. The regional governments also have their own constitutions. The FDRE Constitution establishes a two-tier system. The central or federal government is on one level, and the regional governments are on the other. The regional governments are all equal to each other, and they are unified under the federal government. This diagram of an umbrella attempts to demonstrate their relationship. There is an elaborate system by which executive, legislative, and judicial powers are distributed between the federal and regional governments. The Constitution clearly indicates the spheres of action for each level of government. For instance, the federal government is responsible for matters of national security and defense, and for the collection of tax and revenue. The regional governments are responsible for the creation of a police force, for education, and for healthcare in their region. Regional governments share the role of collecting tax and revenue with the federal government. This division of roles and responsibilities places limits on the federal government. It does not have the authority to interfere with regional governments in the areas that are not its responsibility. Students, why is it important for the regional governments to be limited as well as the federal government?
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up! Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back. It is important for regional governments to be limited so that they do not begin to inflate the interests of their own people over those of other regions. Federalism in Ethiopia allows the citizens of this country to be equal and to protect their cultural heritage. Students, this is the end of our lesson on rule of law and governments. In this lesson, we have learned the importance of limiting the federal and regional governments. In our next lesson, we will discuss rule of law and the fight against corruption. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.